I am talking about a teaching from the new church that has made a difference to me, and it is divine providence. There is a saying that hindsight is 20/20 vision, and while this may have a truth to it for most people, I prefer to think of it as being able to see how divine providence was leading and guiding you in life. And in fact, this passage from the book Divine Providence, number 187, states, "It is granted a person to see divine providence from behind and not from in front, and in a spiritual state and not in the person's natural state. To see divine providence from behind and not from in front is to see it afterwards and not beforehand. And to see it from the perspective of a spiritual state and not from that of a natural state is to see it from the perspective of heaven and not from the perspective of the world." If I look at my own life, I can certainly see how divine providence has been there at all stages throughout my life. Sometimes it is hard to see and trust in divine providence when you are in the middle of a crisis, but then hindsight gives you that opportunity and it becomes obvious. If I start with my birth, my parents adopted me at only a few days old. Surely this was the beginning of the Lord through his divine providence playing a definitive role in my life. I was given an opportunity to a life that otherwise may have been very different. The doctrines of the new church have wonderful teachings about divine providence, but also about free will. If our whole life was governed by divine providence, then it could be considered predestination. However, the Lord gives us free will to choose our path and follow our loves. We are taught that providence acts in everything, the greatest and the least things. And I quote from Arcana Celestia, number 6494. "The divine providence is in the least details of all things, according to the Lord's words, that not even a hair falls from the head without the will of God." The Lord's providence looks to what is eternal and not the finite earthly world. This is sometimes harder to understand with dealing with difficulties or problems, but it is better understood in terms of permissions. Permissions are actually within the laws of divine providence and do not imply the lack of providence. Permissions are when bad or evil things happen or are chosen, and they always somehow, even if indirectly, further some eternal good. The freedom to choose good or evil is permitted and in fact encouraged, as we are then responsible for what happens to us within our own lives and the consequences thereof. Divine providence will seek to bring about the best under the circumstances, but it may contain pain and hurt. The Lord will always want us to choose good and to follow him to a heavenly life, but we cannot go straight there. We have to follow the path of free will and choose it for ourselves. And to quote again from Arcana Celestia 6489, "Nothing is allowed to happen except to the end that something good may come out of it. But because a person possesses freedom that enables him to be reformed, he is turned from evil towards good, so far as he freely allows himself to be turned." Going back to my birth, what a gift for my parents to receive this baby only 6 months after having adopted my sister. The realization of divine providence in this story is that they are loving parents who wanted the opportunity to raise children and share their love. In their religious searching, they found the new church and raised us in this religion from childhood. This was surely the Lord leading them as parents and adults on a spiritual journey, thereby giving me the opportunity to learn and understand the doctrines of the new church. Going to a secular school gave me the opportunity to be exposed to other religions and teachings. My inquiring mind enjoyed challenging the religious instruction teacher about holy mysteries and God in 3 persons. The doctrines of the new church just made so much sense to my teenager brain, which was a real wild ass. And I borrow this description from George Deschamps, who wrote the book Growth of the Mind. In retrospect, I do see how divine providence was at work, and the Lord was quietly leading me forward. I think that if I had not had these opportunities to question and challenge, I may have rebelled against the church at a later stage in life. Fast forward several years, I married a man who was jaded with organized religion, but was basically a good man that had a strong belief in a loving God. Slowly introducing him to the writings was again divine providence at work in my life. Neil grew to love the church and played an active role in the earthly organization whilst continually reading and learning. Neil passed away at the age of 42 after undergoing heart surgery at what some would call the prime of his life. Why then did he pass away at a relatively young age, leaving a wife and 2 young children? At that time in my life, everything was falling apart, and the one truth that was holding me together was that the Lord did not wish this on us, and that divine providence would seek to bring about the best under the circumstances. The Lord governs all things, but does not cause all things, as he cannot rule by compulsion. Therefore, searching for the good that results from something so devastating became my mission. I cannot say that I have found the answers as of yet, but when I reflect and look back on my life, I do see many good things. I've been able to extend a helping hand to others who have had the unfortunate experience of losing a loved one, being a support and showing them that delight and happiness can be found again. I've been able to be the best parent that I could be, not without faults, but realizing that I had to do this job, not on my own, but with the Lord leading us and only wanting the best for us. Who knows, if Neil was around, if I would have stepped up as I did. My parents have continued to lead me and my girls with such a strong spiritual light, and their unwavering faith has always been a shining example. Each day I go to bed at night and give thanks to the Lord for his teachings, and in particular divine providence, and the principle of freedom to choose to follow him toward a heavenly life. Thank you.